Today, we're excited to be speaking with Stuart Tonge of Plague Island Games, designer of Blue Water Navy and 2 Minutes to Midnight. He'll give his perspective on game design and the gaming industry in general here today on Legendary Tactics. So I'd like to welcome today Stuart Tonge, the CEO of Plague Island Games, shall I say? And
I guess.
and the designer of 2 Minutes to Midnight, a great game about the Cold War. And I'm so excited to chat with you and hear your insights about board game design and your game in particular.
Thanks very much. We'll see how much insight I've got, but yeah, let's give it a try.
Great. So tell me, what's your history with the hobby? Like, how did you start in game design?
Well, I mean, I've been into games since or about 11, probably really young. And there used to be a war games convention in Sheffield, which is where I live, called Triples. Sadly, it's gone now. Like so many of these kind of things, people who run it have moved on and all that stuff, and it don't exist any longer. So, but that was my first kind of exposure to a really big kind of convention, and seeing hundreds of people. It was one of the biggest war games conventions in UK. So there were thousands of people there, and there were lots of stuff happening. And anyway, so we went, and me and my dad kind of went there, and he took me when I was really little, and met a local war games club, which is Rotherham War Games Club, and then we joined that. And I think I had to wait 2 years before I was allowed to go, kind of thing. And then got into playing games. And then since then, we always kind of tinker. You mess with stuff, and you look at other people's rules, and you take them apart. And a really good friend of mine called Chris used to design lots of games as well. Now, they were never published games. They were just, today we're going to play Sink the Belgrano, or we're going to play World War I Trench Raiders, or whatever it is, and he'd mix them up, or kind of thing. And so we kind of started doing that, and we played a lot of Harpoon, and we played a lot of similar stuff, and we played a lot of Fleet, and that kind of just got me into it. And eventually I started penning games and ended up with Blue Water Navy, but that took a long time. And then decided, because I'm nuts, that I wanted to make more games, and so continued to do that as a hobby, really.
Oh, nice. Well, and that that previous design, Blue Water Navy, which is also based on the Cold War, and the politics and the more the military side of things. I mean, man, that is a big scope. I was doing some research on that before, because I hadn't actually heard of it before we started chatting. And oh my gosh, that looks like that was a pretty major undertaking for a first design. What was that like?
Silly, I guess. For a first design, yeah, it was nuts. It were very, very big. Because like first time you ever do anything, you don't really know, not really what you're doing. You just kind of start. And at one point it had individual counters for individual ships. So at one point we had stacks, kind of this, and it was crazy. And eventually when we decided, because we, like I say, it really started down at club, and I took down a Falklands game, and we played this little Falklands game that I'd made up, and we played it a couple of times, and people thought I was quite good at that. And then I went back a few weeks later. We just did like a Banana Republics thing, where we'd like have the red force versus the blue force. It'd be whatever, and one of them would have like a leaky Nox, and somebody'd have a Lee that can only make 10 knots, or that kind of thing, old battered navies. And we kind of did that as well. And then it kind of grew out of that because people liked it. So I kept developing it, and I spent 7 years on that game, which is a long time.
Wow, okay.
But it weren't until last sort of 3 where I were actually thinking, okay, I can maybe this is a bit more than just a bit of fun. Maybe I can publish this game. And then it took 7 years to get there eventually. But it's a completely different game to how it started. It's playable, whereas obviously the original game with 10,000 counters or whatever weren't really played. Might have been nice in a museum. You could look at it and go, wow, look at that. But it weren't something you could actually play.
Wow.
Not really. So yeah, we ended up with Blue Water Navy. That one takes about 12 hours to play. But it can take less time, because you can have like a coup and everyone can get shot and things like that. Or you can have a nuclear war, which obviously speeds the game along a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is a big game. And for a first time design, it was very big and very complex, and I wouldn't recommend any first time designer to do that. But that's
I have to commend your discipline and your drive to actually get that across the finish line.
Yeah, some of my friends thought the same thing. I think they were
Yeah,
a bit more scathing than that, but yeah, yeah, it took a lot of effort, and sometimes you were kind of thinking, why am I even doing this? Why?
yeah,
But eventually we did, and eventually we kind of got a good game, and a lot of people. I know there are various comments. People don't like the rule book. Again, that's the first time designer problem because it's a really, really big and complex game, which means you've got a big and complex rule book to go with it. And as a first time designer, I didn't make it as good as it could have been. I could do better now.
yeah,
But so does the rules aren't as good as they could be. But even so, it's got a good board game geek rating. People like it, and it rates favorably compared to the Fleet series, which is the other kind of monster naval series, if you like.
yeah,
The Sea Pirate State as well, but that were a one-off too. So there's not really very many kind of naval Cold War games really.
yeah,
Not in
yeah.
board
No,
games anyway. There's quite a lot of figures games.
yeah, yeah. No, that's great though. But I guess the joy comes from watching other people enjoy your game, right?
Yeah, it's nice to see. I get a lot of comments as well, like from people who said, "Oh, I were on USS America. I flew A6s off that boat, and and I got it sunk yesterday in the Mediterranean," kind of thing.
Yeah,
Or a lot of people posting comments about things that they did and seeing it in game and seeing like just remembering things they did from playing games. That's always nice to see. Yeah,
yeah,
and I mean, it's always nice to get good comments about a game. And equally, like somebody posts a really scathing comment, you kind of like, even after whatever it is, hundreds of comments and things, you still get kind of some really negative ones sometimes, which are a bit like, but you got to take it in your stride and just go, some things are not for everybody. Some people really like it, some people will hate it. It's just the
yeah.
nature. Everyone's a bit different.
Yeah, absolutely. So now so 2 minutes to midnight is your second design technically. So how did you come up
Technically, yeah.
with the idea for it?
Um, I don't really remember, to be honest, where it came from. It was more a case of there's nothing else on the market that does it. So obviously there's the Twilight Struggle
Yeah.
tie-in, which I'm sure we'll mention at some point because it's inevitable in any conversation about a Cold
Yes.
War game. But if you try and name me two other games on the same subject, well, then you've got to work a bit harder than, aren't you? Because it's like,
Yeah.
oh, hold on a minute, all right, Supremacy and Ultimatum, yeah, but they're both 1980s, 1975, maybe kind of game.
Yes.
There's not many others. Okay, there might be 13 Days, which is fairly recent as well, but it's not a topic that people publish games on very often.
No.
And what I didn't want to do is so Twilight Struggle does the Cold War in not very many hours. And I was kind of like, well, okay, I don't really want to do the same thing. Yeah, I could do a different take on it. I could do the same, but different. But I didn't do that. I built something that's much more complex and much bigger. Again,
Yes.
a foolhardy endeavor, perhaps, but that's what I did. And it fills a gap in the market, if you like. It's different to anything else. I don't think there's any other game quite like it on the market that covers the Cold War in as much detail and as much depth. So
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. I mean, Twilight Struggle is a very high level kind of thing. This really gets into the nitty gritty of the technology development and the having factories and industrial production for the countries. And I mean, it's definitely a lot more at a granular level of detail than Twilight Struggle. So that was just something that you wanted to bring to the marketplace.
Yeah, I just didn't think there were anything that really covered it. And I thought, well, there's lots of people who like Twilight Struggle. Maybe, okay, you're never gonna, Twilight Struggle sells really well because it's fast and it's playable and it's easy to all that stuff. And 2 minutes to midnight's not necessarily going to grab all those people. But even if you only grab 1% of the people that
Yeah.
like that game, well, that's still a big market. So
Yeah.
I was kind of like, well, I really want to publish this, or I really want to publish something like this that's more complex. But am I being nuts? Is anybody going to play it? But actually, then you look at Twilight Struggle and think, well, maybe people will, because actually so many people have bought that
Yeah.
clearly people are interested in the history. So what you want is the people that are really interested in the history are going to look at this and think, oh, okay, it's like Twilight Struggle, but just with more detail. Yeah, I'm up for that.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the target market, really.
Oh, that's great. And so when you look at both Blue Water Navy and 2 minutes to midnight, they're both monster games. Lots of scope, lots of depth. So how do you go about designing something at that level? Like, where do you start? Like, what's your process? How do you even begin that?
Well, mostly it starts with lots of research, and if you know what you're doing, it starts with a scope. And if you don't know what you're doing, like on my first game, you don't start with a scope. You just start making things, and then you
Yeah.
end up spending years throwing things away and doing things and throwing things away. So the better way to do it, as with any project in any industry, is to scope what you want to do, work out exactly what you want to do, what do you want to deliver, how long does it need to deliver that in, etc., etc., and then cut your cloth accordingly. So if you want it to be a 6-hour game, it's got to have 6 hours worth of detail, not 15 hours worth of detail.
Yeah.
You know, but in terms of actually getting to the point, so for Blue Water Navy, I spent a very long time in Jane's books and Centre for Strategic. I can't remember the name of the centre. They make yearly books on force structures and orbats and things like that. And you can kind of go, okay, in 2010, Luxembourg had this, and in 2015 they had this, and you know, you get really detailed orbats. So I looked through the orbats and I spent a lot of time working out who had what, and then you start cutting things out. So a good example is French Navy, which isn't particularly well represented in Blue Water Navy actually. So the French in the time period of the game had a lot more ships than they've got. So I think in the game they get 1, maybe 2 counters. They don't actually have a lot more ships, but most of them weren't armed or were very lightly armed.
Yeah.
So they had things like not quite World War II vintage anti-submarine weapons, but not far off. Things that are not really going to trouble a Russian nuclear sub, you know?
Yeah.
So anything like that, or anything that didn't really have a missile, anything that couldn't shoot more than 5 miles, I just ignored. I just kind of went, well, to be honest, they're not actually modern platforms. Yeah, they might exist, but they're not going to hurt anybody.
Yeah.
So I started crossing stuff like that out, and then you're left with your core fighters. So it's all about scoping it. It's all about research, trying to work out what you want to emphasize, and then in the cards as well, because it's a card-driven game. It's all about, okay, what do I want to represent, and there's stuff from every book that you can find about this stuff. There's kind of references in there, and there's bits of things, you know. So you can take inspiration from stuff like that. I probably took inspiration from movies, from Hunt for Red October, and all kinds of places, because it's all that stuff that people enjoy. It's all that same genre kind of rolled into that game. So we're a bit of luck, it tells them kind of stories. And then from there you work out how to make it into a game. So once you've done all that research and you've got this enormous pile of stuff that you want to represent, you're trying to work out, okay, why do I make a game out of this? Because it's okay for, you can have complexity. Complexity in itself is kind of all right, but it's got to be fun.
Yeah.
And if all right, setting a game up like this might not be fun. It might take an hour to set Blue Water Navy up. But if you're into that kind of thing, you're going to know that anyway. But in sort of half an hour starting to play, you want people, even if they don't really get it, even if it's a bit, I don't really know what I'm doing or why I've done this, or at least you want them to be kind of enjoying it by that point.
Yeah.
So I always do. I would do like a fun pass. I kind of get my systems down, then does it work? Then we do some balancing, and then the very last thing, or maybe it's kind of baked in before that, but certainly before it goes to press, I do a fun pass, which is just ignore everything else, ignore what it is. Is it fun? Are you enjoying playing this or not?
Yeah.
Because if you're not, then you've kind of missed by a very wide mark.
Yeah. And is it hard to boil the research down into playable mechanics, or is it something where you feel there's a bridge there that you can kind of find pretty easily?
Yeah, it can be. I mean, so like that example about ignoring platforms, they're not going to ignore any ship that's not got a missile that can reach at least 10 miles.
Yeah.
Well, that's an arbitrary thing where I kind of went, okay, what do I think? As someone who knows a bit about modern warfare, I'm going to make that arbitrary decision. I'm not going to represent anything other than this. Now, other people might disagree with that. So one of the things in the game in Blue Water Navy is that actually submarines are very bad at finding surface ships. Now, if you watch the BBC and you watch CNN, and you'll never hear anybody say that because they never tell you that. But actually, submarines are very bad at finding surface ships because they're always cubed to a target. We've got satellites, we've got planes. And now, if we didn't need satellites and we didn't need planes because submarines could see everything, well, then we wouldn't have built them, would we? Yeah. So you got to kind of think a little bit outside the box and think, okay, well, why does that exist in the first place? Because they're never going to go and be on BBC and say, yeah, actually, a Stuart class, Britain's nuclear hunter killer, super lethal thing, but it's nearly blind. Actually, we can only see 20 miles. I'm not going to tell you that. So you kind of have to kind of work out, and so you kind of have to work out what you're going to represent, and not everyone's going to agree with you. Some people will say, no, you're completely wrong. That's nonsense. But you've got to have lines in sand somewhere. You've got to decide what you're going to represent and how you're going to represent it.
Yeah. Oh, wow. So as someone relatively new to, well, not new to design, maybe, obviously, because you've been with how long did 2 minutes to midnight take to kind of
a lot less. So Blue Water Navy took about, like I said, about 7 years, but realistically, I guess we wasted 4 years. fiddling around, learning what to do, learning Illustrator, for example. When I started, I didn't really know Illustrator, so you can't make counters unless you know a drawing package, things like that. 2 minutes to midnight, all in all, about 2 years, which is not bad for a game of its size and scale, and that's including testing and everything else. But it will literally, I probably spent 6 months of that in a spreadsheet. So for the first 6 months, it existed only in a spreadsheet, and then I'd kind of, like you make all the cards up and you kind of cross-reference them, and that's not very interesting actually. So you have to be kind of geeky to find any enjoyment out of that, really, because you're really just taking loads of different pots of research and boiling it down, and then trying to see how you're going to make a game, and and then eventually you do print it out, and you kind of go. I think I didn't print it out. I used Vassal or I used TTS to do the first cut, and kind of and probably Excel to make the first cards as well. And you kind of and then you start seeing some fruit to your labor. But you always start small, so you always do. Okay, I spent 3 months making all this supporting info. I've written a set of rules. I kind of think it works, but it might not. I'm gonna chuck it on a table, and I'm just gonna see if it can survive the first turn.
Yeah.
And if it can, you kind of like, yay. And if it destroys itself, then you go back to basics and start again, kind of thing. So,
wow. Yeah. So lots of determination involved for sure.
Yeah, it's I suppose it's because obviously I work in tech industry as well. So it's a little bit like software development, where it's just very cyclical. It's kind of do a bit, then stop, then do a bit, and it's almost like a sprint. You kind of do a bit, evaluate what you've done, do another bit, evaluate it. It's kind of like that, and just make incremental progress.
Oh, nice. Yeah. So do you have any tips that for other designers out there, any approaches that you found to be really effective? Any tricks of the trade?
I think the main thing would just be is just the boring stuff, really. It's well, obviously, firstly, be super interested in whatever it is you're building, but a first-time designer is going to be, that's just a natural. I don't think anybody goes, oh, I want to be rich. I know I'll become a board game designer. That's the way forward. Because that's not the way.
No.
So obviously, be super interested in your product and what you want to, and the story you want to tell through the product, and scope your product. The first thing to do, you can mess around with pre-designs and stuff, but that scoping bit is so important. Just to go, what am I trying to achieve? Okay, it's a game about mushrooms. Okay, what am I trying to emphasize? Well, I'm trying to emphasize that they grow and they do. They come in 6 different colors, and then at midnight they fight each other. Right? Okay, fine, good.
Okay.
That's then the scope of your design, and that's then what. Don't go off on a crazy tangent and start doing. Try and just get your basics and try and scope what you're doing, work out what you're going to do, work out how long it wants to take. If you're trying to build a 3-hour game and you end up with a 6-hour game, then you got to get your chisel out and start chopping everything away that you don't need.
Yeah, and that must be hard.
That is very difficult, but it's more easier. It's easier than the other way around. It's easier than if you've not got enough material and you wanted a 6-hour game and you've only got a 4-hour game, and then you go because then that's a problem. It's much easier actually to go the other way around, to have too much material and then edit it down to just the bit that's relevant.
Oh, really? Okay.
At least I find anyway.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. So yeah, because it's almost like you get all these mechanics together and you think it all fits, and then you got to slice one of them or two, and
So for 2 minutes to midnight, we did. Even though it's still quite a big game, it's like sort of 7 to 9 hours ish, depending on how you play. Obviously, it might take longer. We can play it faster, but we know it really well. So it depends on the speed you play. But the original cut was like 15 hours. The original build of it, and then we started taking stuff out, and even then with the released version, I still look at it, and it's kind of a weird one for me, because it's like, well, should I have cut it down more? Are there things in here that didn't really need to be in?
Yeah.
And that's always a really difficult determination, especially for a game like this, because this weren't a 3 or 4 hour game. This was always intended to be a big game.
Yeah.
So it's kind of all right for it to be a little bit flabby in some places, as long as it's not needless flab, as long as it's stuff that actually adds a little bit. But there are still places where you look at it and think, should I have just cut that mechanic? Would it have been a better game if I got rid of that? And I don't think there's too many in there. But the other thing about game design that I have noticed myself is a game's never really finished. And at some point, you just have to go, this is what we're printing. It's good enough. It's fun. Playtesters like it, and it plays, and that's okay. But then you'll go back 2 years later and think, yeah, I should have cut that, and I should have made this, and and if you were to redesign it again, you'd probably end up with a different game.
Well, that's what a second edition's for.
Well, yeah, I suppose.
Yeah, I spoke with Jason Matthews, who designed Twilight Struggle, about releasing the game into the wild,
Mm.
and what a nerve-wracking experience that can be, because sometimes there are things that people discover that you just never came across in playtesting.
Yeah, and I think for a game like that, it's slightly different. So for my game, for 2 minutes to midnight, it's a big game, and because it's a big game, there are more dice rolls, there are more variables, and that makes it more difficult to break, actually, because you can have a few crazy results and it don't skew everything too much. Where a smaller game, like say if you've got a 45-minute game and you get a few crazy results, your design's bust, it's completely destroyed because you didn't, So almost like the longer game you've got, the more you can kind of fudge it a little bit.
Oh, that's
Um,
interesting.
so if you think about Twilight Struggle, I mean, there's quite a lot of luck involved and stuff like that, but it must have been quite difficult to scope that because it's a smaller game and you don't want too many wild, crazy events to happen. So you need
Yes.
to kind of scope that in. In 2 minutes to midnight, actually, I want to say I necessarily encourage that, but it's intentionally sandboxy, so you can do things that didn't really happen. That's the point in it.
Yeah.
You can do, but you can get some kind of crazy results in it. It is possible, but it
Yes.
still don't break the game.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's great. So, and obviously, 2 Minutes to Midnight was on Kickstarter, a successful Kickstarter. What was that experience like for you?
Nerve-wracking, yeah, same idea. I mean,
Yeah.
the other thing about what you said about releasing a game before is just because I think it's good, and my
Yeah.
dad thinks it's good, and my War Games Club thinks it's good, and they're all fairly, they're all Yorkshiremen. They're not going to lie and say something's good. If you think it's bad, they won't use the word bad. They'll tell me exactly what they think. But
Yeah.
you still don't know how everybody else is going to react.
Yeah.
You send it out to reviewers, and you still, it's really nervy putting some out there. So because and some reviewers, will really rip it to shreds, and some reviewers will only play it for a little bit, and everyone's looking at slightly different things. Some people are more interested in how it makes them feel when they play the game, and some people are more interested in what are the mechanics like, and some people are, everyone's got a slightly different bent to what exactly they're reviewing. But yeah, chucking it on Kickstarter was the same thing. It was, you just hope that someone's going to buy it. You put it on there, and especially having
Yeah.
never done it before, you don't really know what you're doing. It's a big learning experience. And luckily for me, I had a company called Draco who helped me out. There's a Spanish company, and
Yeah.
so they were giving me advice and guidance as well. And we worked together, and they published a Spanish edition of the game. So if
Oh,
you want a
great.
Spanish edition, there's one available from Draco Ideas, and so they were kind of guiding me through. But yeah, it's still even with advice and even knowing that they'd done it, which did help a lot, you still kind of, at some point or other, you've got to decide, right, let's push this button and see if anybody buys it or not.
Yeah.
And I still remember because I pushed the button at 2 minutes to midnight on launch day with a certain band's music playing next to me.
Yeah.
And then immediately the orders started coming in. I was like, hey, it works. People buy it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was really good. It was a really good experience. But very nervy as well. And I'm going to use it again. So the Sparta's going to go straight to Kickstarter, and for the foreseeable future, I'll be using Kickstarter because I'm a tiny company. There's just me. I don't have $1 million worth of capital lying around. So the only way for me to publish a game is
Yeah.
for me to go to Kickstarter to draw that capital. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's
Well,
definitely, if you're a small publisher, it's definitely the way to go.
yeah. And speaking of your upcoming design, Sparta with an exclamation mark, what was your inspiration to suddenly jump back in time for your next design? And what are you looking
Well,
forward to from
it's
this?
actually not my design. So this is it's Chris Van Burden's design, who did Europe in Turmoil, and he's got Barbarians at the Gates coming out from Compass, I think, end of this year.
Oh, great.
So we worked together, and I knew Chris because I'd done Blue Water Navy, and he'd done Europe in Turmoil, and I'd actually talked to him, and we'd played a game of it as well online. So I already knew him, and I kind of rang him and said, look, I've got this new company, but a company with only one game is not a company. Have you got anything that's within sort of 6 months, a year that might be interesting? And we discussed a number of different ideas that he'd got. And there was this particular one, and I have a fondness for Ancients anyway.
Yeah.
So I've got a lot of Richard Berg stuff. I've got a lot of a full shelf of Richard Berg stuff.
Yeah.
I've got miniature figures. I've got all kinds of. So I love Ancients anyway. And Peloponnesian was always popular because it's Sparta, and that's got
Yes.
references to 300. And so you kind of look at it and think, yeah, is this going to sell? Well, maybe. Yeah, it's got Spartans in it. People like Spartans. So So yeah, we decided to do that. We talked about what the game would be and how it would work and everything. I made a playtest copy up and tried it out and just thought, yeah, this sounds good. Let's do it. So yeah, we agreed to give it a try, and it's a bit of a leap of faith for Chris. So I'm thankful for him for trying that, because obviously you've seen me do one game that sold okay, but we're still not in fulfillment yet. We start fulfillment next week.
Yeah.
So in terms of overall credits, it's still improving. It's not really out there. So it was good of him to take that leap of faith and agree to work with me. And we've been working on that now since before Christmas, probably about 6 months by now. And it's really shaping up. The design's kind of almost finished, and we're just polishing the last bits.
Oh, great.
So yeah, it should be a really interesting take on what we're trying to do, and what you're always trying to do with any game is, don't do what someone else has already done.
Yes.
Everything is, whatever you do, it don't really matter what you do. Like it can be the mushrooms,
yeah,
it can be anything, but it's got to be unique.
Yes.
And it don't have to be unique in terms of theme, but it's got to be unique in how it does exactly what it does, or the way it does it, or the way it makes you feel while you're doing it, or whatever. But it's just got to be slightly different, so that if you put it on a game, if you put Sparta next to 4 or 5 other Peloponnesian war type games, they will all play differently, and they will all have the different interesting bits. And I like that better from that game, but I like this better from that game, and they'll all feel like slightly different games, which is very important.
Wow, that's it. Yeah. So, and this will be a much faster playing game than what you're used to.
Yeah. So yes, Chris's design will be hopefully a better seller and a more playable game than the other 2 designs. Yeah, unfortunately, it's kind of a weird one, isn't it? It's like, how long do people want to play games for these days?
Yeah.
And even in the hardcore kind of war games. So like my local club is a war games club. It's not it's not a Euro games club. It's a war games club. That's what we do. We play war games. But in recent years, I've started taking more Euro games down, and more designs that lean more towards more Euro games, and even the grizzled kind of grognardy types, are kind of all right with that. They're kind of all right with roads and boats, and and brass and Spirit Island and all this stuff, and they're kind of and it's all right. And you think then, well, okay, if you guys like this game, if you enjoy this experience, then why do we want to play a 9-hour game? Is a 6-hour game better, or a 3-hour game better? So it's still one that I'm trying to figure out, to be honest, is that exactly what do people want? But I think even for war gamers these days, it kind of tops out at a weekend. You kind of 12 hours, 16 hours is probably your max size for a game that people are actually going to play.
Yes.
So somewhat like a Pacific War, which is it's a phenomenal design, and I played it myself, and Mark in fact cut it down into scenarios so it is playable, but the campaign itself's not really playable, and I don't think it was ever intended to be, because it's thousands of hours. Same way they recently did Victory Games as a game. They did Vietnam again, didn't they? Which covers 65 to 75 in, I think it's weekly turns, so it's enormous. And you're not really supposed to play a campaign.
Yeah, famously, I think it's supposed to take 100 or more hours to complete.
I think that'd be a bit on the lighter side, but yeah, it'd be a very big game. I mean, there'd be 500 weeks, wouldn't there? So,
take as long as the Vietnam War took to actually play out in real life.
Well, me and my dad actually, we played back when I was a kid, maybe 16. We played it, and we had it up in we had a porta cabin actually that we used as like a games room. I think we had it on that on his games table for about 3 months. And we played it solid for 3 months. And after 3 months, we kind of went, it's really fun, but can we play somewhere else?
Yeah.
Because there's only so much, even if it's best game in the world, there's only so much you can play. There's only so much you can absorb, and then you kind of want to change. You don't want to eat. Everyone likes chocolate, but do you want to eat for every meal?
Yeah.
It's that kind of idea. So I think there's a bit of a quandary in how long games should take. But yeah, definitely what I'm trying to do is I'll probably not publish a game that's as long as either of the 2 games that I've published. They're probably going to be 6 hours at the top end, and I'm really aiming for 3 hours. And if I publish multiplayer games, and my next design will be a multiplayer game, that's going to be aimed at 2 hours. And the other, so Sparta's 2 to 3 hours, and the other game that nobody knows about yet, but I'll tell you about in a bit, is also going to be 2 to 3 hours. So there's a definite progression towards games that people can play, because Blue Water Navy is a good design, and it's a fun design, and it's unique. But if it were a 3-hour game, how many more people would play it and experience it? than if it's a 12-hour game.
Yes. Yeah. I think that is an important consideration is, I think if you get a game in around 2 or 3 hours, it's just going to be more popular. It's going to sell because people are going to be there's more wide variety of people are going to be able to play it.
Yeah. And I think that's probably, so, there's nothing wrong with either of the two designs. They were both intended as monster, big chunky games, and they deliver that, but you just kind of think maybe it would have been better if they'd have not been quite as big. However, for both of them, they're cut up into scenarios and you can play all kinds of different scenarios.
Yeah.
So there's other way around it as well. Like 2 minutes to midnight is playable in about an hour and a half to play. Like you can play a particular turn. So you can say, okay, let's play Cuban Missile Crisis and we'll do like an hour's game kind of thing. And you can do that. But after that, you're probably going to want to keep playing. You probably want to go, yeah, what happens next?
Yeah. So, well, that's it. If it's a great game, then absolutely.
Well, hopefully anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, the best games always seem like they end too soon. So you want to play it again. Oh, that's good. So, well, that was my final question here. Basically, is what is on the horizon for Plague Island games and for Stuart Tonge?
Well, for me personally, I work as well. This is a part-time thing, really. So I do this at weekends and at night times, and I get plenty of night time because I've got twin girls, so I'm up quite late.
Yeah.
Most nights. But for Plague Island, so we've got Sparta coming. That's coming to Kickstarter in August or September. We're not quite sure yet. Okay. And you can see that on the Plague Island Games website, and there's information about it. And it's actually on Kickstarter as well at the minute. You can follow it, kind of thing. It's not live or anything, but so we're doing that one, and then the next game after that is going to be a game called Julii, which I've just signed literally last week. Wow. A guy called Frederick, who's designed that, and he's done a really good job. And it's a little bit Republic of Rome, but it's not. It's kind of Republic of Rome mixed with a Euro game. 2 to 3 hours. You get senators, and you can prosecute other people's senators, and you can take control of Rome. And it's a really, Republic of Rome were a good game. It's almost the same discussion, really. We played a lot of Republic of Rome 10 years ago, but it's very complex.
Yeah.
And if it weren't as complex, we'd probably still play it.
Yeah.
But because it's such a complex game, we stopped. And also because, there's a lot of competition, there's a lot of other games, but Republic of Rome in particular, if you're the only one, or if there's only two of you that really understands all the mechanics, and the other two guys at the table, they kind of get it, but they kind of don't understand it all, then you've got an enormous advantage. And the other two players, really, they've not really got a chance. They're just kind of filling the numbers in. And that's Republic of, and Republic of Rome's a vicious game as well. It's you fancy going to Gaul? Oh, you don't want to go to Gaul. Well, actually, we've got more votes than you've got, so you're going to Gaul. And it's awesome. It's that kind of thing. So anyway, this game's a little bit like that, but it's nicer. It's not as vicious as that. It's much quicker, and hopefully it's gonna be really good. And we're just I've only signed it the other day, so we're gonna start a round of testing on that and go into building that, and that'll probably be Q1, Q2 next year for that one.
Okay, wow. So that's you're stepping up production from one game every 7 years to.
We're trying to do a bit more than that. It'd be good to get like 3 out before I die. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's great.
And after that one will be my next design. So I never really intended actually to have other people publishing through Plague Island, but like you just said, it's you do need a pipeline, and I can't realistically push out 2 games. I can't do a game a year. Yeah. Because there's not enough time. So which is why I've gone out to other designers and say, okay, what have you got? And both of these games are both Ancients games again. I like Ancients.
Yes, so that's great.
And a lot of people are publishing kind of spacey games and stuff. I think that part of the market's quite well covered. So we better look. We'll get these Ancient gamers who are interested in that kind of stuff. But so I didn't really kind of go into this intending to publish lots of other people's designs, but then I keep finding these great designs, and and I look at it and I play it and I go, yeah, this is a really good game, but they've not got a publisher, so we end up agreeing to do deals and things like that. So my next actual design is going to be, I don't know, after the Julii game, so that'll probably be September 2023, I would think, by now.
Excellent.
So we've got a big pipeline of stuff all lined up. And
I think 2 games a year, something like that. That's
yeah,
pretty good, especially as a part-time thing. That's pretty
it's
good.
certainly. I don't want to do any more. I can't do any more than that. I can do,
Yeah.
and the reason I can do 2 a year is because it's segmented. So you kind of do, like Sparta at the minute, it's mostly in art. There's a bit of design, but that's Chris because Chris is designing it. And then when he's done his design work, that comes to me to do some development work. But at the same time, you've got the artists and everything else. And then we'll roll off then. So we'll roll off and we'll start thinking about marketing and we'll start thinking about Kickstarter, which means then that I'm not busy then. So then I can look at Julia and say, okay, let's look at the Julia rules. Let's start playtesting that. So it kind of goes nicely, but only with 2 at once. I won't want to do more than 2 at once.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's excellent.
So
Well, it sounds like there's some exciting stuff coming.
We better look, and I just hope that people, I hope that people like it, like what they see. Like I said, Kickstarter is going to be the platform because I've got not enough money to publish games without that platform. And you do see people kind of, I think there's a lot of support for Kickstarter. A lot of people still buying games on it and things like that. And the smaller publishers, the people like me, you see a lot of the big guys using it. They don't really need it, but that's not bad because it means there's lots of people on the platform who want to buy board games. But the little guys, people like me, we really do need that platform because otherwise there's no game, there's no publishing. So.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Well, it's kind of neat that I think in the modern world, we have this ability to have a small publisher get out to the masses. It wasn't possible, 50 years ago or something. You had to have a lot of distribution, but now there's lots of opportunities. If you got a great game, great design, you can get it out in the world.
Yeah, it's all tech in it. We are, without the Kickstarter platform. I mean, I know other people are doing it. So you've got GameFound now, and no doubt other people will eventually come along and want to slice that market too. But yeah, none of that would have been possible 20 years ago. So it's changed, and you can see there's quite a lot of production companies popping up, and a lot of them only do one game, and they disappear again. But it allows them to get the game out that otherwise wouldn't have existed. It allows people to back a product that might never have made it to market. It might have got stuck in 3 publishers will think about it queues, and it might never have made it. And actually then people get a game. There's a bit of risk in Kickstarter because it's not a store, it's a pledge. But most games I think deliver and people end up getting a game that they enjoy. So it really gives people a lot more opportunity to buy something that might not have otherwise existed, and let's create things that might never have happened. So it's a really good thing. So certainly for any small publisher, it kind of breaks them barriers to entry down, which used to be very, very high. And now basically, if you've got a good idea and you've got the ability to execute, then you can do it.
Yeah, that's great. Now I'm going to put the links to your Kickstarter page and everything in your company's website. Is there anything else that you want to speak about or promote or anything?
Not really, I don't think. I mean, it's pretty much the Playable Games website is where we put all the stuff. If you come and subscribe, if you're interested in any games, you'll subscribe. That's where mailing list is where people find out about things first. And so you'll find out about these games I've talked about if you sign up to that. And then it's really just the Kickstarter link for Sparta. Nothing else is live yet. So the Julia game is still in very early dev. That'll disappear now for 6 months. I'll probably not mention that again until we're ready to show some stuff. Although it does have a Facebook page. You can find it on Facebook if you want to look at it there. Equally, Sparta's got a Facebook group. You can come and join that if you want to participate in the game. So because we're still in dev, what I'm doing at the minute is I'm posting quite a lot of art to that group, so you can see artwork and stuff like that. But in the next month, we're going to be doing things like, here's a copy of the rules. Check them out, see what you think. Here's a copy of the map. What do you think? Is it ugly? Is it pretty? Is it, this kind of stuff. And so if you're interested in helping out with any of the dev for any of the games, check us out on Facebook and come and join in and tell us what you want or what you don't want or what you think is good or bad. So
yeah. Oh, that's great. Well, thank you so much for taking some time to chat with us, Stuart. Very nice to meet you and to hear about your experience as a game designer and a fan of the games and the hobby. So that's excellent.
Thanks very much. And maybe next time I'll have some more helpful hints.
That's great. Thank you.
Cheers. Thanks. Bye-bye.